We are now at President Nixon. So the first thing we really want to get down is kind of the new style of notes we're going to be starting. We start to have to go a little bit faster because the tests, they are coming. So if you'll notice, it went from a packet of notes to a one-pager and then some questions. So you're going to have to take and you're going to have to write your ideas down. I've given you a lot of things that I think are important, and obviously if I've written down election of 1968, I kind of want you to listen to what I say, summarize it, what do I say is important, write your thoughts down, and we'll be good to go. But these are your notes from now on. So the very top of the notes, actually, you have a president, of course, of Richard Nixon. And then you have the president, the years in office, and the party. And then in class, we're going to kind of summarize a significant event summary. So don't worry about that box. You might be thinking about what you'll put in there, but don't worry about it too much. The front page of these notes is going to be the domestic policies or the domestic events of Richard Nixon. And then if you flip it over, I hope you're flipping it over with me. You can hear my page flipping. You're going to see the foreign events on the very back. This is going to be kind of the quick hit. What do we need to know about Richard Nixon? He's president years 1968 to 1973, and he is, of course, going to be... Lyndon Baines Johnson was a Democrat. We were all mad at him. Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? So we vote for a Republican. So be thinking about that. We do have essential questions on these presidents. So since we're going so fast, I kind of want to have one question I really want you to think about throughout the entire notes. And that question for Richard Nixon is, do the negative effects of the Watergate scandal truly deserve to overshadow the positive foreign policy accomplishments of Richard Nixon? So be thinking about that, because Watergate, I bet you all have heard that word before, but does that deserve to overshadow his other achievements? So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to start on the front page where it says domestic, okay? With the 1968 election, you really just need to know that Republicans benefited from the Vietnam disaster, and with that, they will be elected. They will nominate Richard Nixon. He's been elected before in 1960. He went up against JFK, lost because of a very bad TV debate. But with that, Nixon is going to be your Republican candidate. You do need to know it was Hubert Humphrey that he ran against. Hubert Humphrey, Democrat, plagued by anti-war protests. In fact, in 1968, there were massive protests outside the Democratic National Convention. There is going to be a third party in this one, and you do need to know that, and that is the one, the only, George Wallace. He will run from the South. He attacks blacks and liberals. You know, he says segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And do y'all remember also what happened when he ran for president? Do you? He's the one who stood in front of the University of Alabama door. He was shot in the back. Karma. But with that, the election of 1968 are those three gentlemen. If you take a look, Nixon wants to represent what he claims is a silent majority. Now, on your notes, you'll notice it says silent majority in quotation marks, then I have a dash and then a blank. Here's what you need to know about the silent majority. They worked, they paid taxes, and they did not protest, but do you think they liked their money going to Vietnam and their kids being drafted? They didn't at all. So they were against the war in Vietnam. They just weren't the ones running around saying flower power, make love, not war, and burning their draft cards. They were a silent majority, but in all reality, if you have 60% of the country that doesn't like Lyndon Baines Johnson, they are the majority. It's just some of them were silent about their discontent. Richard Nixon says, hey, I understand you don't like this war. I'm going to get us out. This is the electoral map. You can clearly see right here that the third party here, George Wallace, plays a significant run in it. The American Independent Party is what he runs under. And, of course, he wins the South there. Yeah, that doesn't shock you, right? Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. But here's Nixon. Nixon wins 56% of the electoral vote, but you'll also know that he only won 43% of the entire country's popular vote. Something to think about. Nixon was also the first candidate to appreciate the importance of the Sun Belt. He appeals to them, and he says, I will take care of our new modern technology. I will get us out of Vietnam, and I will end this liberal reform that has kind of been since FDR. Other than that, I will be honest, I'm pretty much done with that little area. You can see I have a little dash right there at the end of the silent majority. I do want you to know that the silent majority seemed fed up with the protest, violence, long hair, and drug use and sexual promiscuity of the counterculture, the hippies. They want to get back to core values, and they want that that 1950s culture, that conservative culture. We'll think conservative, Republican. So he appeals to that silent majority. So under silent majority, we should probably say work, paid taxes, didn't like the war, but they were also very fed up with the hippie culture, if you will. It's definitely a hippie culture. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to jump to foreign policy because this is going to be the big one for Richard Nixon. So on the back of your page, are you flipping it over? Hear me flipping my paper over? Okay, we have foreign policy. Now, foreign policy under Nixon, obviously, what is he going to do in the other parts of the world? A lot of people hear Nixon, they think Watergate, resignation. But here's the deal. We need to talk a lot about his foreign policy. So let's go through this. First thing, Nixon proved to be a very effective foreign policy president. Most foreign policy decisions were made by him, and you notice I have NSA advisor blank on your notes. His NSA advisors, I need you to get this name down. His name is Henry Kissinger. That would be a really awesome quiz question for me to ask you. His name was Henry Kissinger. And him and Nixon are going to be largely responsible for some of the most interesting foreign policy decisions. And actually, if it weren't for Nixon's kind of deceitfulness, if you will, I think that Nixon possibly would have been one of the best foreign policy presidents of the 1900s, the 20th century. He did develop a plan, him and Kissinger, Nixon did, and that plan is summed up in one word and one word only. Are you ready for it? Say it. Détente. Say it. Are you saying it? Détente. You want to know what détente means? It's right there. You have a blank. Détente literally means a relaxing of Cold War relations. So Nixon is trying to end the Cold War by relaxing relations with communist countries. The first thing he wants to do, and let's go ahead and make sure we get down, exit from Vietnam, an honorable exit from Vietnam. And one of the key phrases he runs on is this idea that he will provide peace with honor. He says, I know we can't really win this war, but we can maintain or get to peace with honor, and we can get out of Vietnam as cleanly as possible, achieving that peace and protecting America's kind of reputation as much as you can. He also, under détente, wants to use the U.S. trade to induce cooperation from the USSR. He says we shouldn't be isolating the USSR. We need to be trading with them. They're one of the biggest countries in the world. Why not have a good relationship with them? Yes, they might be communists. Yes, we want to contain communism. But here's the deal. You isolate them, they're only going to get angrier. He says why not talk it out? Last thing for détente, you should have 1, 2, 3 little bullet points under détente besides the definition of détente, is he wants to also improve relations with China. Whoa, did I say just China? Did I just say China? The communist Mao Zedong China? So Nixon right now says, I want to end the war, Cold War, I want to end the Vietnam War, and I want to be friends, kinda, with the USSR, and I want to improve relations with China. This is crazy to think that this is all about to possibly be done. But I'm going to tell you something. Nixon actually did a pretty dang good job of it. Now, the first thing, let's talk about the Vietnam War. Exit from Vietnam. Let's talk about this, okay? Nixon on Vietnam. First thing he wants to do, I need you to make sure you have that peace with honor saying in quotation marks. He says, again, he appeals to that silent majority. He says, let's have peace, let's have honor. Now, the one thing that I think that that Nixon did that was absolutely genius on Vietnam is he decided that he's going to turn over the war to the South Vietnamese. He says, if the South Vietnamese don't want to be communists, guess who should be fighting this war? The South Vietnamese. And you think that that was music to the silent majority's ears? Of course it was. It's what everybody during the 1960s was saying. Why are we fighting this war? Why are we fighting over there for rights that sometimes people in America don't even get? Now, what Nixon does is he takes and he terms this, are you ready to get this down? And he terms it Vietnamization. Say it. Vietnamization. Now, this is turning the war over to the Vietnamese. Now, I'll be very honest with you, this is very familiar to us because if you know Iraq and Afghanistan, one of the ways we've gotten out of Iraq is basically Iraqiization. We are trying to train Iraq on how to fight their own war against the terrorists so we don't have to be stuck there forever. This is straight out of the book of Nixon on Vietnam. Vietnamization, peace with honor. But we, oh boy. Before we leave exit from Vietnam, we also need to talk about the fact that he wages what we call a secret war. He bombs Cambodia and Laos, and he largely uses Agent Orange to do it. Because of this, he is going to spawn some of the most unbelievably large protests there are, because here's the deal. He said he was going to end the war, and what did he do? He just bombed 2 more countries. So under protests, I'm pretty sure you know this one, okay? Vietnamization, protests, hoping to get that knockout blow. He bombs Cambodia and Laos. We need to make sure we have those 2 countries down, okay? He takes... And we see the largest series of protests in American history. I bet you already know one. There was a very famous picture of an American student being shot and face down in the ground. Y'all remember where it is? Y'all remember where it is? Kent State. There it is, right there. Kent State and Jackson State. Now, before we go on too much from leaving this, I do also want to make sure you get some other stuff down. Vietnamization, gradual withdrawal of U.S. troops, handing over the fighting to the South Vietnamese. I think we've got that. But make sure you put those 2 things with Vietnamization. There's also one more thing that I need to make sure you know. That the secret war we have right here, secret war, were conducted without the consent or the approval of Congress, which sounds a whole lot like Vietnam in the beginning. So the secret war, these bombings were conducted without the consent or approval of Congress. It's going to look kind of shady. So what ends up happening, and we need to get this one down, and I even started on your notes, yes? You see this? The War Powers Act is going to be passed in 1973. I need you to pause this, get down what the War Powers Act did, and let's talk about it in a second. Pause this. Okay, so what you're writing down is that the War Powers Act required Congress's approval to send the U.S. forces into combat for more than 90 days, and the President must, Commander-in-Chief must inform Congress within 48 hours as to reasons why we are putting our military in the middle of something. Now you think back in American history. Think about how we got involved in Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin, right? Now, there was no formal declaration of war, and basically LBJ just said, hey, I want a resolution saying I have all access to power and military I want, and they gave it to him. Remember, we call it his blank check, yes? Well, with that, he ramps up Vietnam, and before you know it, we're in the middle of it, 500,000 troops, and we don't want to be in it. Then you elect Nixon, and Nixon says, I'll get you peace with honor. I'll Vietnamization this stuff and turn it over to the Vietnamese and gradually withdraw our troops. And then all of a sudden, what does he do? He bombs what 2 places? Cambodia and Laos. Oops, that's going to be an issue. So the secret war is going to really, really spawn a ton of these protests. And like I said, there's that very famous picture at Kent State, Jackson State. Look at those troops moving in. This is on a college campus, guys. College, American college campus. This is what it looks like. So we're really going to start to see that when Nixon takes over in 1968 or 68 and 69 and 70, these protests are going to get crazy. Now, how does the Vietnam War really end? This is how it ends. The fall of Saigon, because there was a ceasefire reached. A ceasefire means we're stopping shooting, okay? So in 1973, maybe in between the secret war and fall of Saigon, okay? You're going to put a ceasefire. U.S. troops start to be withdrawn. In 1975, the South Vietnamese capital of Saigon fell, and Vietnam fell to communism. You want a big picture here? Vietnam proves containment cannot be sustained. Vietnam proves containment cannot be sustained because you cannot protect all places in the world from becoming red. Here's a picture of all of the South Vietnamese trying to get the heck out of Saigon because they knew Ho Chi Minh and the other people were coming, other communists. Here's the Americans trying to abandon the embassy in Saigon. You'll notice this is a very, very famous picture right here of them trying to escape in the helicopter. But a united communist Vietnam is the end of the Vietnam War, which means we won or we lost. We lost. And one of the really hard things to think about is the fact that now they are communist, but not only are they communist, but we lost so many men and so much money. 3 million Vietnamese were killed, though, as well. 58,000 Americans were killed. 300,000 were wounded. Underfunding of the Great Society programs because we put all of our money, $150 billion in U.S. spending. And also the fact that U.S. morale, self-confidence, and trust in their government was completely decimated. Completely crazy. The impact, and you just might want to put a little bubble out to the side somewhere if you want to. 26th Amendment, 18-year-olds vote. Restricted media access to the battlefields. Oh yeah, that's probably a good idea after what we saw. Nixon abolished the draft, and the War Powers Act limits the power of the president. And with that, let's go ahead, take a look at the last little bit. It's the Vietnam Memorial. Tune in for video 2.